So in this one here, what you want to do is you want to create an artifact that has horizontal reflection symmetry, vertical reflection symmetry, and twofold rotational symmetry. So now the question is, how do you go about doing that? So one possibility, so again, in the interest of time, I've copied the seed artifact over into the grid. I did that before I hit the record button. But from this starting point, now what are we going to do? What algorithm are we going to do, or process are we going to follow to complete this artifact? So one way of doing it would be to have multiple passes across this grid. So in my first pass, I would add horizontal reflection symmetry. On the second pass, I would add vertical reflection symmetry. And on the third pass, I would add twofold rotational symmetry. And one thing that you could do, excuse me, one thing that one can always do before you hit the submit button is to, regardless of how you created the artifact, what algorithm you used, I'm going to check that this artifact that I'm about to hit this submit, that it has horizontal reflection symmetry, vertical reflection symmetry, and twofold rotational symmetry. Okay, so what we're going to do, the algorithm that I propose, is that we do, rather than multiple passes across the grid, we're going to process each cell that exists, each of these bricks, by adding, when we process it, we add horizontal reflection symmetry, vertical reflection symmetry, and twofold rotational symmetry to the artifact, and then we move to the brick, and then we move on. So in this way, we're going to be able to get through the artifact in one pass, and we're going to use, I guess I'll use a row major algorithm starting from the bottom and moving my way up. I could have done a column major algorithm as well. All right, so here we go. We start at the bottom. We encounter this first brick, and so we're going to add its horizontal reflection counterpart if needed, and I do need to add it because it's not there. I'm also going to add its vertical reflection counterpart, and I'm also going to add its twofold rotational counterpart. So I've added 3 bricks right there for this one. That's the most that this brick can add to the artifact. And if we just take a quick look at these 4 bricks here in total, right? This one, I don't need to add anything more. It already has vertical and horizontal and rotational symmetry and so on. The same is true for the rest of these bricks that I just added. Okay, so we're here now. We move on and continue processing this first row. So here we have another brick. I'm going to add its horizontal reflection, its vertical reflection, and its twofold rotation. So now I have processed the first row. Oops, sorry, need to undo this. There's a trigger finger, an itchy trigger finger there. All right, so now we're going to move on to the next row. This only has 1 brick in it. I'm going to add, as needed, right? It's vertical reflection, it's horizontal reflection, and it's twofold rotation. So I'm done. Now I'm done with this one. Now I move on to the next one here. I'm going to add its horizontal reflection, its vertical reflection, and its rotation. If you notice, we're kind of like doing rectangles here the whole time. So that's kind of, make our lives easier as to how to understand these. All right, so now I've finished processing this row. Now I move on to the next one. This one's in the exact center, so I don't need to add anything. I move on to this one. I need its vertical reflection. The horizontal reflection is fine, and the rotation and the vertical reflection happen to line up here. And then this one here is going to be the same thing. We're done with this row. Now comes, notice how this processing this center row, when we're doing these kinds of reflections and when we're using a row major algorithm, is sort of a special case, right? Where I don't have to move up or down for any of the pieces that I'm adding. All right, so now we move on to the next row. This one, I can I don't know if I remember, if I look over here, this was something that I already added, so maybe I don't need to process this again. Right, so I guess I could use this information over here and say this has already been added, and so therefore anything that's been added, right, the property that we have is it has all of its components, all of its reflections and rotations that are needed. So I don't need to process this one, but let me not overcomplicate the algorithm and let me just go ahead and process this. So I have to think a little bit more, but less steps, right? So I need to have its horizontal reflection, its vertical reflection, and its twofold rotation. Now I move on to the next one. I need its horizontal reflection, its vertical reflection, and its twofold rotation. So notice how I'm always creating squares here. That's a really cool pattern that I'm observing, right? So I move on here. Again, I just placed this, but let me go ahead and process it. So it's vertical reflection, horizontal reflection, and twofold rotation. This one here, I need a horizontal reflection, vertical reflection, and twofold rotation. And then this last one here has been processed as well. So taking a step back, right? What we're really doing with this horizontal, vertical, and twofold rotation symmetry completion is we're creating rectangles. Right, so this row is processed. We move on to the next one. The rectangle exists. We're good. Now we move to the last row. This rectangle exists. It's a square. This one does not. So I need to complete that. And then everything else is good. So we have completed it. So notice there were several algorithms that we could employ and also information that we could draw on from if we encounter a cell when we're processing it that was empty here, then we could use that information to conclude that we do not need to process that cell. Or if we didn't want to do this lookup over here, we could just still process the cell. But it would be kind of an easy process because we're not placing any bricks. We're just checking to make sure all of the bricks that need to be there are in the artifact. All right, so practice this, and then after this, there'll be a Mystique test on all of these completions. Good luck. Oh, let me submit this first. Always got to do that. Okay, good luck.